You already know what I'm about to say. You've heard it before. Maybe not in these exact words, but somewhere deep inside you, there's a voice that already knows the truth. And yet, here you are, still waiting, still telling yourself that the right moment is coming. That soon, something will click. That one day, you'll wake up and finally feel ready. But let me ask you something honestly. How long have you been waiting for that feeling? Weeks? Months? Be honest. Maybe years. And in all that waiting, how much has actually changed? That's what we need to talk about today. There is a certain kind of person in this world, intelligent, capable, full of vision. They can describe their goals in detail. They know exactly what they want to achieve. They've thought about it so many times that it feels almost real already. But they haven't started. Not really. They've opened the Notes app. They've made the plan. They've told themselves this week will be different. But when the moment comes to actually sit down and do the work, something invisible stops them. They wait. They scroll. They tell themselves they'll feel more motivated later. And later never comes. If that sounds familiar, keep listening. Because this video was made for you. Here is the truth that most people refuse to accept. Motivation is not a starting point. It is a side effect. It is what happens after you take action, not before. You have spent months, maybe years, waiting for motivation to arrive like a taxi you ordered. You're standing outside in the cold, waiting, watching every car that passes, wondering why it hasn't shown up yet. But the taxi was never coming. It doesn't work that way. Motion creates motivation. Action creates energy. You don't wait to feel ready. You act, and readiness follows. But your brain doesn't want to hear that, so it keeps lying to you. Let's talk about what is actually happening inside your mind, because once you understand it, you cannot unsee it. Your brain is not lazy. Your brain is brilliant. It is constantly doing exactly what it was designed to do, which is protect you from discomfort. Every time you think about working on your goals, your brain scans the situation, and it sees effort. It sees uncertainty. It sees the possibility of failure. And your brain files all of those things under one category: threat. So it offers you an escape. It says, check your phone, watch one more video, eat something, rest a little. It floods you with just enough dopamine to make the discomfort fade, and you take it because of course you do. It feels good. The problem is that every time you take that escape, your brain learns something. It learns that avoiding your goals makes you feel better, and it remembers that. It files that away. And the next time you sit down to work, the pull toward avoidance is stronger than it was before. You are not failing because you are weak. You are failing because you are caught in a biological loop that no one ever taught you how to break. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Think about the last 3 days. Not last month, not last year. Just the last 3 days. How many hours did you spend on your phone? How many hours did you spend scrolling through content that meant nothing to you 5 minutes after you saw it? How many hours were absorbed by distraction, by noise, by the comfortable numbness of consumption? And now think about this. What could you have done in that time? What project could you have started? What skill could you have practiced? What version of your future self could you have been building? The math is brutal when you actually do it, but most people never do the math because the math tells a story they're not ready to face. You are not short on time. You are short on honesty. You keep telling yourself you're busy, but you're not busy. You're distracted. There is a massive difference between the two. Busy people are running out of hours. Distracted people are drowning in hours they never use. You have time. You've always had time. What you haven't had is the willingness to use it in a way that actually costs you something. Because that's what real work costs. It costs comfort. It costs ease. It costs the familiar warmth of doing nothing. And your brain does not want to pay that price. So it tells you stories. You're too tired. You'll start tomorrow. You deserve a break. You work better under pressure. These stories feel true because your brain tells them with complete conviction. But they are strategies. Clever, biological strategies designed to keep you comfortable and keep you stuck. And the longer you believe them, the smaller your life becomes. Let me tell you about the student who knows this feeling. The one sitting in their room surrounded by textbooks they haven't opened, with a deadline 3 days away, watching their phone instead of studying. They're not enjoying themselves. Not really. There's a tension underneath it all, a low hum of anxiety that never quite goes away. They keep checking the time, adding pressure to the procrastination, making the whole thing worse. They tell themselves they work better when they're desperate. They tell themselves the stress helps them focus. But what they're really doing is punishing their future self to give their present self a few more hours of artificial comfort. And deep down, they know it. They know exactly what they're doing. That's the cruelest part. The awareness without the action. The knowing without the moving. Maybe you're not a student anymore. Maybe you're someone who wanted to start a business 2 years ago and still hasn't. You've done the research. You know the market. You have the idea, but you haven't launched. There's always something missing. Always one more thing to figure out before you start. You need a better plan. You need more capital. You need to learn one more skill. You need the perfect moment. But here's the devastating truth about the perfect moment. It does not exist. It was never real. It was always just fear wearing the costume of preparation. Fear is the engine running beneath all of this. Not laziness. Fear. Fear that you'll try and it won't work. Fear that you'll invest yourself fully and still come up short. Fear that maybe the version of you that exists in your head, the capable one, the successful one, maybe that person is a fantasy. And if you never test that, you never have to find out. So you stay in the space between dreaming and doing, where the dream is still safe, where failure hasn't happened yet, where you can still tell yourself the story that you could do it if you really wanted to. But that story is costing you everything. Here is what nobody tells you about comparison. You look at other people your age and you see where they are, what they've achieved, how far ahead they seem. And something inside you tightens. Maybe it's envy. Maybe it's shame. Maybe it's a quiet panic that you've fallen behind and you don't know how to catch up. And instead of letting that feeling move you forward, you let it paralyze you. You scroll through their lives and you feel worse about yours, and then you use that feeling as an excuse to retreat further into distraction. The comparison becomes another reason to wait, another reason to feel unready, another reason to delay. But here's what you're not seeing. The people you're comparing yourself to are not waiting for motivation. They are showing up without it. They are doing the work on the days it feels impossible. They are building while you're watching, not because they are more gifted, not because life handed them something it didn't hand you, but because they made a decision that you haven't made yet. That decision is not glamorous. It doesn't come with a rush of inspiration or a dramatic turning point. It doesn't feel like a movie moment. It feels like sitting down when you don't want to. It feels like opening the document when your brain is screaming for you to check your phone. It feels like choosing discomfort over comfort in one small, quiet, almost invisible moment, and then doing it again the next day, and the day after that. That's the whole secret. That's everything. There is nothing more complicated than that. You want to know what discipline actually is. It is not what you see on social media. It is not the dramatic 5 a.m. wake up with the cold shower and the hour-long workout. That's performance. Real discipline is ugly. Real discipline is the moment when everything in you wants to stop and you keep going anyway. It's the Tuesday afternoon when you're exhausted and the work isn't exciting and there's nothing to perform for anyone, and you do it anyway. Not because you feel powerful, not because you feel motivated, but because you decided that your future matters more than your present comfort. That decision, made quietly, repeatedly, in moments no one ever sees, that is what actually changes a life. You need to stop waiting to feel different. You need to stop waiting for some internal shift, some morning where you wake up and all the resistance is gone. That morning is not coming. The resistance never fully goes away. What changes is your relationship to it. Right now, when resistance shows up, you treat it like a stop sign. You see it and you stop. You back up. You wait. But resistance is not a stop sign. Resistance is a signal that you are moving towards something real. It shows up most intensely when the work matters most, when the stakes are highest, when growth is closest. The people who succeed are not the people who feel no resistance. They are the people who feel it fully and move anyway. So what do you do tomorrow morning? Not in a week. Not when things calm down. Tomorrow morning. When the alarm goes off and your brain is already looking for a reason to delay, what do? You don't negotiate. That's the answer. You stop negotiating with yourself. Every time you say, I'll just do 5 more minutes, or I'll start after this one video, you are entering a negotiation with a part of your brain that will always win that negotiation. Because that part is older and faster, and it doesn't care about your goals. It cares about comfort. You cannot out-argue it. You cannot reason with it. You can only act faster than it can respond. That is the practice. Act before the resistance has time to speak. Put your feet on the floor before your brain wakes up enough to object. Open the work before you've thought about it long enough to find a reason not to. Shrink the space between intention and action until there is no room left for hesitation. Start with something that feels almost too small. This is not permission to stay small forever. This is strategy. Your brain resists big starts. It doesn't resist small ones, so give it something small. 15 minutes of real, undistracted focus. One paragraph. One page. One task completed all the way through. Don't ask yourself to transform overnight. Ask yourself for one honest effort, right now, today. Because something shifts the moment you actually do it. The moment you prove to yourself that you can. Not because the work was easy, but because you did it despite the fact that it wasn't. That proof changes something. It builds a record. A small one, at first. But your brain is paying attention. It is learning that action is survivable. That discomfort doesn't destroy you. That the other side of resistance exists. And every time you prove that, the next step becomes slightly less impossible. You need to build your environment like it's a tool. Because it is. Your phone is not neutral. Your desk is not neutral. The space you work in, the people around you, the defaults you've built into your daily life, none of it is neutral. All of it is either pushing you toward the person you want to become or pulling you away from them. There is no middle. Look around at your life right now with honest eyes. What is pulling you away? What is making distraction the easiest option? Remove it. Not tomorrow. Today. Put the phone in another room. Turn off the notifications. Close the unnecessary tabs. Make focus the path of least resistance. Because here is the thing about willpower that almost no one tells you. You don't have an unlimited supply of it. Every decision you make burns a little of it. Every temptation you resist costs something. So the goal is not to be stronger than your environment. The goal is to build an environment that doesn't require constant strength. Set yourself up so that the default is the right choice. So that the easy option is also the productive one. That's not weakness. That's intelligence. Stop consuming so much content about doing things and go do the thing. There is a version of procrastination that feels productive because it wears the clothes of learning. You watch the videos, you read the threads, you listen to the podcasts, and it all feels like forward movement. It feels like you're preparing, but you have enough information. You have had enough information for months. What you don't have yet is the record of having actually tried. No video can give you that. No content, no matter how good, can substitute for the experience of sitting down and creating something real. Learning without action is just sophisticated avoidance. And some part of you already knows that. And about the days when you fall back. Because you will. This is not pessimism. This is honesty. You will have days where you lose hours to your phone. Where the old patterns win. Where you go to bed feeling that familiar guilt again. On those days, the most important thing you do is not some dramatic act of recovery. It is something smaller and more powerful than that. You simply return. You don't make it mean everything. You don't let one bad day become the story of who you are. You don't let one stumble become a reason to stop. You return. Quietly. Without drama. Without the ceremony of starting over. You just pick up the next small piece and you continue. That is what people who change their lives actually do. They return. Over and over, without judgment, without ceremony. They just keep coming back. Stop being cruel to yourself. Not because you deserve to feel comfortable with where you are, but because guilt doesn't build anything. Lying in bed hating yourself or wasting the day doesn't create the discipline to make tomorrow better. It just depletes the energy you need to actually try again. Self-compassion is not softness. It is fuel. It is the thing that makes it possible to try again after failing, instead of using failure as proof that you should have never tried at all. Talk to yourself like someone who believes you can do better, not someone who thinks you're hopeless. The voice in your head needs to be the voice of a coach, not an executioner. You are not who you have been. You are not defined by the hours you wasted, or the plans that never moved, or the version of yourself that kept choosing comfort over growth. That is what you've been doing. It is not who you are. The separation matters. You are someone with a capacity to change, who has not yet fully decided to. The decision is available to you right now, not someday. Right now, in this moment, after this video ends, before the next distraction finds you. You can choose differently. One time, and then again tomorrow, and the day after that. Not because you suddenly feel ready, not because the resistance disappeared, but because you decided, quietly and firmly, that the life on the other side of the struggle is worth more than the comfort of staying stuck. You've spent enough time on the wrong side of that decision. You already know what it feels like to waste another day. You already know what it feels like to lie awake with the weight of your own potential unused. You know that feeling. You've lived that feeling more times than you can count. Now it's time to know the other one. The one that comes from actual effort, from actual progress, from actual proof that you are becoming the person you always believed you could be. Not in your imagination, in reality. Built slowly, imperfectly, through small, consistent choices that no one applauds you for. That version of you is not far away. It is one decision away. And the decision begins the moment you stop waiting for it to feel easy and accept that it never will. That's the whole game. That's everything. Now go start. Not tomorrow. Now.